What a great story. I love that video. And I bet our friends that are joining us today, Awesome Autistic Ogden, probably have lots of those stories and community options. We're so grateful for the great work that you guys do. And so this is really a way to just launch off collaborating with you on more of those great stories. So thank you all for taking the time this morning as we concentrate especially on the Ogden area as we're working on this statewide launch, the statewide pilot program of the next 3 years as we work towards really meeting the needs of adults with autism and their families in a way that really hasn't been done before. So we're excited to launch this with you and really involve Ogden. I'm Charlene Wells. I'm on the advisory board for the Madison House Autism Foundation that's based in Maryland, but was founded by Utah and Jalen Prince 13 years ago. Madison House is on the national and international stage and really leading the way very specifically with something that has fallen through the cracks, as many of you know. What happens to our autistic citizens after the age of 21? Families are left to fend for themselves, and that's our role as a community to figure out that solution. Nationally, there are more than 30 million people impacted by autism spectrum disorder. And of course, in Utah, we've got one of the highest rates. The lack of opportunities for when adults age out of school, it's just too large for families to address on their own. And that's why we need you on this call so that we can really collaborate statewide and integrate and share and interconnect all these great things that you are already doing and more that we can do. We need the leadership in hospitable communities that are this interconnected and supportive, and Utah is just so great at that. Every community is very different. That's why it was really important for us to really get local and dive into understanding the needs of each area. Right now, I'm just so excited to introduce our governor. He was on our state call that we launched April 7th, but his message is so spot on that we have to play it for our locals, especially those that didn't get to see it the first time. So right now I'm just going to introduce our governor, who's going to lay out, setting the stage of what we're doing.
Utah has the proud distinction of leading the way for our nation in so many ways. With our healthcare systems, our commitment to families, our work to end homelessness, our universities and their research, our tech transfer and entrepreneurial spirit, and so much more. But there is a growing group of individuals and families in all of our communities who face extraordinary challenges, often unnoticed and too often alone. Autism is a diagnosis that affects not only the individual, but multiple generations of families. Parents, siblings, grandparents, all of you face the challenges of accessing early support that will give your child the best chance to realize his or her unique and exceptional potential. But when that son or daughter turns 22, we know that most support ends. We know that one or both parents often must leave their career because there are not enough supportive housing opportunities, supportive employment situations, or social or recreational programs. We also know that 85% will live at home their entire lives, and then when their parent or caregiver dies, some may become homeless. Others will be assigned to the next available bed, removed from the only community and contacts they've ever known in their lives. As such, we face both a humanitarian and an economic crisis. When any individual does not reach his or her potential, we are all impacted. Healthcare costs rise, support needs to rise. Talents are missing from the workplace, homelessness increases. But worst of all, families face the lifelong nightmare of wondering who will care for their adult child when they no longer can. But it doesn't have to be this way, and Utah knows what to do. As governor, I lend my full support to a new collective action effort to change the future for all adults with autism and their families here in Utah. We especially welcome the involvement of Madison House Autism Foundation, one of the first national organizations to dedicate its work to adults on the spectrum and their families. Our goals for this Autism After 21 initiative are to replicate the exemplary projects that already exist in our state, learn from national research, best practices and emerging concepts, work together to envision and build inclusive communities across our state, and develop a statewide blueprint that can lead the way for other states, other families, and other communities. Now, a young woman here in Utah who is on the spectrum spoke about the isolation that she and her autistic brother feel, their desire to connect and contribute, and their capacity to do so if the rest of us find the way to inclusion. She said, "We have the capacity to know where we are wanted." And then she went on to say, "Just because we don't show it doesn't mean we don't love you back." That is our goal with this initiative. With this work, we take another important step to achieving greater equity and inclusion for all Utahns. Thank you to all of you taking part in this statewide virtual call to ensure that all our communities are represented, involved, engaged, and moving toward interconnectedness. I have every confidence that with all of you collaborating with Madison House Autism Foundation, the state of Utah will produce the blueprint for all other states to follow.
It is so great to have the governor's voice to lead this out. He is just amazing and spot on with exactly what we're dealing with right now, and the capacity that we have to make such an incredible difference, not only for our Ogden region and the state, but for the rest of the country. So thank you for being part of this. Okay, many of you already know what the stage is, but thank you for your patience as we kind of go through. We want to just make sure that we're all on the same page with what we're addressing right now. We will be towards the, in a few minutes, we will be opening up for discussion and questions. This is very collaborative, so we need to make sure that we hear from you. So please just keep track of those questions or those points of discussion you'd like to talk about. And then what we're going to do now, I'm kind of skipping through a few things. I am so excited to introduce the founder of Madison House Autism Foundation, Jolynn Prince. And Jolynn and her husband, Dr. Gregory Prince, they live in Utah and in Maryland, but both have Utah roots. And they're the parents of 3 children, including Madison, who's 31 years old, and he's on the spectrum. The Princes were featured in Deseret News a couple of years ago for their groundbreaking work to spotlight and address the major crisis that faces all families who have a loved one with autism after the age of 21. Jolynn has been a national voice for adults with autism and their families for decades. And when she founded Madison House in 2008, it was the first national organization to focus solely on the issues, challenges, and opportunities for adults on the spectrum. That vision has led to policy changes at the national level and research shared freely with stakeholders and guidance to hundreds of groups and families wanting to start their own inclusive housing project. And she worked on and led the national awareness campaign that led to the National Autism After 21 Day on April 21st. Jolynn was selected to be part of the Interagency Autism Coordinating Committee on the National Institute of Health. She has served on the advisory board for Johns Hopkins School of Education and sits on several boards for universities right here in Utah. She has spoken at the United Nations, Voice of America, consulted on an NBC documentary on adult autism, participated in the White House Summit on Autism, and presented at TED Global in Oxford. Oh, she is recognized as National Mother of the Year. And by the way, in her free time, she is a world-class photojournalist documenting humanitarian efforts globally. She's traveled to more than 72 countries, documenting the work of numerous NGOs. So it's now my honor to turn the time over to Jolynn. Hi, Jolynn.
Hello, thank you, Charlene. And technology, I've turned everything off and it's still making sounds here. Everybody knows that you're on a Zoom call except your husband.
Right.
I am absolutely delighted to be with you all. I have such fond thoughts about Ogden and time that I spent there as I was growing up in Utah. And I welcome you here because you're a very, very important part of what we are trying to do across the state. And these are our initial steps to try to bring people that are thought leaders in communities together so we can have the thought leaders in the communities informed about what adult autism is. We're finding that there are so many people that have no idea that the kids that they have seen on all of these videos, the beginning of Autism Month, happen to grow into adulthood. And when that adulthood happens and there's very few supports, especially after we have gone to such great lengths for education and have expended a lot of our national resources on that, we need to continue the process of having individuals on the spectrum be involved with us and participate in our communities. And I had a wonderful conversation with your university president from Weber State the other day, talking about such issues when people are trying to access education on a higher level, because we have so many people that are capable of doing that. And it's a very, very wide range of people in your community. Let me give you an idea. There's approximately 63,000 people in the state of Utah as we use the latest statistics of 2% of the population. If we put two parents and two siblings, and in Utah, you may have many more siblings than that in a family, but if those folks are holding hands and they make a line, that line would stretch from Salt Lake to St. George. That will give you an idea of the enormity of this situation and that we have responsibilities for the people that are in our community, and especially you as thought leaders. In fact, I see somebody from Weber State right now up here in one of our thumbnails. Welcome, hello. Um, we want to have the thought leaders informed because you are the ones that make policy, you make decisions, you have control of the money, perhaps the land, you are in board meetings, you sit on county councils, city governments. All of you have an opportunity to represent not only your neighbors and those maybe your relatives, but you have a constituency. And along with that, there is a responsibility. And we want to work with you to make certain that things can happen in the state of Utah. First of all, there's going to be a learning curve for the leaders. And if you look at it as two bubbles, the greater community bubble and then the autism bubble, we want to work with both of those in different ways, but so there can be a coming together so everybody fits within the larger community. It's a large project, but I think it's exciting because Utah can be a leader. And we know that people are civic minded, you care about one another. And I can't think of a better place in the world to start than with the state of Utah. I'm very proud of my heritage and coming from Utah. And I hope that we can work together to be an example across the country about the things that can be done and how we get it right. And leading into that, I want to mention that I've got a couple of friends who have written a book, John Donvan and Karen Zucker, a book called In a Different Key. And this was about the first autistic man and the first person to have the diagnosis of being autistic. And he happens to be from Mississippi, and he is still alive. When they found this out, they wanted to go forward and to write this book. And it became very comprehensive about a lot of other things with autism. But there is a new movie out, and it's been a hit in film festivals across the country. And I know as of 2 weekends ago, they got 2 first place mentions in 2 different film festivals on the same weekend, and there have been numerous others. But it is about how this community has stepped forward behind this gentleman and made certain that he was part of their community. There's a little bit of a trailer on this, but I want you to be able to look for this in film festivals. I wouldn't be surprised if it would go on general release sometime in the future because it's that powerful. But we would like to have you take a look at that. And I want to say thank you for being on board. We are going to be in touch with you on 2 levels. We want you to spend 5 minutes a month and read the things that we send out to you. We'll tell you more about your state, more about autism, and how you can make your community more inclusive. And then probably 6 weeks out, maybe a little bit longer, we would love to have you participate in a survey so we can get some important information as we start this 3-year project in the state of Utah. Now I'd like to have you watch the trailer about the community that got things right.
I've always known Don. I don't remember not knowing Don.
We knew that Don was a little different,
but what it was, we didn't know.
He is the first person to be ever diagnosed with autism.
At the time, autism wasn't even a word.
I had heard that the first person diagnosed with autism might still be alive and living in this small town in Mississippi.
Good to see you.
Hey, Shelby Welby.
Hey, Don.
Hey, Nat the cat.
Oh, hi, Don, darling.
Hey, Chad with the plant.
Stop resisting! Get the cups. Hey, can I go, please?
I only knew that I was different and that different was bad. You're weird, you're a freak, you're a retard, you're a loser, you're ugly. These were the things that I heard on a daily basis.
Come on, go, go, go!
In my research study, every Black family that I've met with has asked a similar question. How do we keep our children safe? How do we fix this situation so that our children won't die?
Toasty? Yeah.
Like that.
Autism is a little different. Your brain works a lot differently than most people.
Hello. Hey, Karen. Hello.
Do you get any kind of support from anybody?
Not really. It's just me. Nobody's gonna do what I do.
So you just can't die?
Right. It's gotta be immortal.
Don's got some odd behaviors and some eccentricities, but he's our guy.
I was just so drawn to him and this community. I wanted to figure out, how did they get it right? Because they really did get it right.
What a great story that's resonating all over. They're winning film festivals as it is now being released. And I really love what she said, they got it right. And there's so many of you that are getting it right in your communities. You know, those of you especially that are on this call, I know already of the great work that you're doing. So what this effort is about connecting all those great dots, formalizing it, turning it into a blueprint that the rest of the country can then follow. So very, very excited about that. I'm thrilled to introduce our next guest. She is one of the foremost authorities on housing for adults with autism, and she is part of Madison House Autism Foundation, Desiree Kamika. Now, Desiree has made it her mission to understand and represent and share the broad range of autism-friendly community development opportunities and inclusive housing needs. She is the director of our Autism Housing Network and has been for over a decade. And she has helped guide more than 250 inclusive housing projects across the country and works with community leaders daily to build more inclusive communities. She is a sought-after expert on neuro-inclusive housing models. She co-authored and co-edited the groundbreaking Community Development Report. It's like this thick. A Place in the World, which is being praised for changing the landscape and defining new markets for housing for neurodiverse adults. Desiree has a truly unique knowledge of the policies and funding, planning, and collaboration that is needed to create inclusive communities. And best of all, she shares it widely. Desiree, thank you so much for joining us on this conversation with the leaders in Ogden.
Thank you, Charlene. And thank you, Ogden, for showing up and being here with us. This initiative is something to bring all of us together. So those who are leading within the autism community, within the disability community, and community leaders, so that we can ensure that people with autism do not have to be displaced or experience homelessness, but that they can find their place in the world. I have found that it's helpful to kind of share that this is part of a continuum of the way in which we have evolved as a society. I mean, the video that was just shown, the trailer, shows very clearly the pain of institutionalization. And Donald should have been institutionalized, but he wasn't, because his parents said no. And his community, instead of keeping him segregated and isolated, decided that they were going to wrap their arms around him and make sure that he was going to be part of his neighborhood and his greater community. And that's our hope for the future, is that we've moved really from institutionalization, and we've now moved towards a space where people are able to live in the community, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're relationally part of the community. And so now we need to take the innovation that has happened in Medicaid and in terms of how people are able to receive services and make sure that they can find the places where they can be supported to live the life of their dreams. You know, we're really moving away from trying to create programs and like placing people into programs, and really trying to create that wraparound system where the person is at the center and they're able to find the job and the faith community and their home and their, you know, recreation, their hobbies that match who they are as an individual. It's one of the reasons why we developed the A Place in the World report, because we found that in general, the community development world and the housing industry was unaware that people with autism and other neurodiversities need housing, that they could get their supports in their own home, but they need to be able to access affordable, accessible housing. We also found that when the housing industry thinks about accessibility, they don't necessarily think about someone with autism. They usually think about individuals who use wheelchairs. And while that is extremely important that we have wheelchair accessible spaces in homes, it's also important that spaces are cognitively accessible. That's why we like to use the term neuro-inclusive community development, so that we're taking into consideration the cognitive accessibility features that make all of our places and spaces a space where everyone of all abilities can participate. When we think about this blueprint, it can almost be overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be. Because if we go community by community and we're able to understand where are the places in which people might be unintentionally excluded, you know, are we providing the right training for first responders, for healthcare facilities? Is there enough awareness within the general community to recognize that someone might have a neurodiversity? And so therefore you might be a little bit more patient, or you might ask, is there a way that I can make this space more comfortable for you? We're moving slowly, community by community, into a more neuro-inclusive world. And so we at Madison House Autism Foundation like to do that through data. We need data-driven solutions. So knowing what is our baseline, and are the interventions that we are initiating, are they making a difference? And if they're not, how are we going to change course? We also are very strong believers, and the reason why we're doing the Utah Blueprint is to bring together all the different partners, is because we are collaboration. We collaborate already with organizations all across the country, and we need to be able to connect the dots, connect all of that which is disconnected, and share the amazing things that Utah is already doing. But what's happening in Logan might be different than what's happening in Ogden, and what's happening in St. George, or what's happening in Salt Lake. And so trying to connect all the dots so that we have replicable solutions, that we can learn from each other, the lessons learned, the best practices. That's how we're going to be able to move faster in the direction of neuro-inclusivity. So I want to just reach out to all of you and say that you will soon get a survey. If you are a thought leader, a community leader in your community, you're going to get a baseline survey that's just going to ask questions about neuro-inclusivity, where you are now. It's going to ask you questions like, are your housing resources prioritized for people with autism or other intellectual disabilities? Do your first responders get training? Are your local festivals, do you have a sensory friendly area? Do local stores offer sensory-friendly times for shopping or going to the movies? Just some basic neuro-inclusive data so that we can start to understand where the gaps are and then be able to create that blueprint and start fleshing out what are all the areas that a local community needs to think about to make sure that their community is autism friendly. For those of you who are part of the autism bubble, we're going to be reaching out to you soon as well, because we're going to develop a survey that we're going to give to parents and self-advocates on the autism spectrum to know from their perspective where they feel that community might be unintentionally excluding them and where accessibility changes can be made so that they can be better part of the community. And so I ask that when we reach out to you to get some feedback, that you respond so that we can make sure that our survey is capturing the data that not just we think is interested, but really what the community thinks that needs to be captured. And then finally, at the very, very end of this process, we're going to be doing a market analysis for housing, because the reality is if an individual can't access housing, then they're either going to be placed in the next empty bed of a group home or into a host home like the adult foster care system. And that's heartbreaking and traumatic for individuals. And so the more that we can understand what people want in terms of housing solutions, is it families that want to bequeath their home? So creating a guide to help families be able to give their home to their loved one. Is that what more communities want? Or is it creating planned communities with cognitive accessibility features? Do local zoning allow for accessory dwelling units on people's property as a use by right? These are all different ways in which housing solutions can be created locally. And so thank you so much for joining us, for being part of this movement. We need your expertise, your leadership, your contacts, your network to make sure that all across Utah, all different communities are able to meet the needs of their autistic residents. And so something that's also very important to Madison House is that we are listening to autistic voices. The next video that we're going to show is talking about what are people's dream jobs, because people with autism don't just want the same thing, they're diverse. And so it's important to understand that they need to be included in all sectors of the workplace. And so I hope you enjoy this video. I look forward to our collaboration in the future, and see you soon.
I could teach history in a way that changes the world.
Right now, I'm considering neurology or emergency medicine.
In special education with kids on the autism spectrum.
I would love to help people with communication. I love learning about people. People learn about themselves through history. I could teach history in a way that changes the world.
He said he wants a candy store where all with disabilities can work and gain more independence.
I want to be a doctor. Right now, I'm considering neurology or emergency medicine. And then eventually, I want to do overseas medical missions in developing countries to help bridge healthcare gaps there.
My dream job is to work in special education with kids on the autism spectrum, which will be the ideal job for me, and giving back because I was in that same situation myself. So that's my dream job.
My dream job would definitely to incorporate autism advocacy into my legal career at some point. So hopefully to eventually become some sort of lobbyist to create legislation focusing on autistic adults and their access to affordable housing and accessible housing, as well as employment. A lot of us struggle to get employment, and I think it's because of a lot of misconceptions people have about autism. So really just breaking that barrier and educating corporations and other places of what it is we can offer and how with the proper accommodations, we are really an asset to the workforce.
So I'm actually working and living my dream job. I started out as a dental assistant, worked as a clinical research scientist. I really was fired from a lot of jobs, or not just fired, but I quit. I couldn't hold a job. And then I found the mental health field. Fell in love, so I do therapies now and advocate work, and that's what I love, man. This is where I want to stay.
Acting. I'm a bit rusty at it. I guess acting or modeling or something like that would be a dream job.
Many years ago, I always said that I had a dream of maybe working in the computer industry, in the tech industry. I mean, there was a time when I was always a master at upgrading computers, building computers. And now today it's more about understanding software, not necessarily coding it, but understanding how it works and try to get other people to understand it.
I wish I could just retire and fish at this point, but I think I would enjoy being a linguist.
Wow, so enlightening, right? Oh, okay. So this is the part where we get to open it up. I want to go to gallery view so we can see everybody, and you know, we want your thoughts, your comments, questions. We really want to get to know the Ogden area. Let me just say this while you're thinking of what you'd like to ask or contribute. I've been talking to a lot of experts around the state, and I think by the third or fourth conversation, I was seeing a pattern of folks saying, you know, we've tried this before in Utah. We've tried to collaborate. But so finally, the fourth time I go, so why didn't it work? What happened? And then I started asking everybody, same answer for everything. We didn't have a driver. There was no driver. So now we got a driver. That's what we're doing. So that's why this is exciting. That's why this is different, to have the voice of the governor on board, to have Desiree on board, and of course, all of you collaborating. So what kinds of questions do you guys have? Let's see, I'm looking at the chat box. Let's see. Okay, I don't see any question yet. Anybody's got a question? Maybe just raise your hand. Oh. Okay, I got a question. So I'll start off. Maybe to Jalen. Okay, so right now, I think the folks on the call, you know, this is a little bit smaller. I guarantee you, when we have the breakfast like we normally do, we're going to have it full. We'll have a lot of people show up for breakfast. But who are the types of people that we really need to involve in this? Those of us on the call, who do we reach out to, you know, outside the bubble kind of thing?
Good. There's two very important areas where you could be very helpful to us. One is reaching out to your peers, because the intent with this, and having the governor and many other individuals starting with our first call and then going into each of the communities, we are identifying the thought leaders, and we need to identify more of the thought leaders because everybody needs to be educated. I was just talking to somebody today who happens to be building a park, and it happens to be in Utah, and they're talking about, well, what things could be put into a park that would be helpful in making it more inclusive. And so we were going over some of those things. So when you look at people who are responsible for doing parks, transportation, housing, employment, community engagement, have you ever considered with fireworks that it might be nice to have an area, or maybe even provide earphones that can cover someone's ears so they can see what's going on, but maybe not have all of that sound and that extra stress, where they still want to be part of something important. There's a lot of little decisions that can be made. We want the people who can make the decisions. And by having you and your peers on board, it's going to send a tremendous message to the rest of the community. And then we want to have you help us also identify people in your communities and others that you know, because there is no autism registry. We can't go out and say, let us see all of the families in Utah that are living with autism. For any one of a number of reasons. We may have people who have moved in from elsewhere. There may be people who have been, who are adults that have just recently been diagnosed. And when somebody leaves the school system, there isn't necessarily a trail so we can find out who these individuals are. But I do know, by following numerous different situations online, how many people are hurting in the middle of the night because questions are not answered. and they have fears for the future, for their loved ones, for themselves, for the siblings. It's a whole family situation when somebody has autism. So we need you, and we will be communicating with the leaders and also with those with autism, but you need to help us identify these individuals, and we need to have you help us bring other people to these conversations. This is just the beginning of things in your quadrant of the state, and please help us.
Great. Anybody with questions, comments? Maybe I'll throw out to Scott, Brad, Shannon.
Stacy has a
down
question.
here.
Where's some of the gaps? Oh, what?
Stacy has a question.
Stacy.
Hi.
Hi, Stacy.
I don't have a question, and I like every video you showed, I started crying, and I was like, "Get yourself together, Stacy." And then you showed another video, and I started crying again.
I know, right?
So I am absolutely thrilled, and I think that I have heard of this organization before, and I know I read that article in the Deseret News a while ago, but this is resonating very strongly with me right now, especially as my son is getting older. But no, sorry, there's my dog. I actually am the founder of Awesome Autistic Ogden, and my son is almost 16.
Wonderful.
And yeah, I am so excited with what you're doing, because I that's my biggest fear, is what is happening with my son when he ages out of school. And I know the older he gets, the less resources he has. And I know that I am not alone in these fears and these struggles. And I'm so excited. I'm so excited to be involved and be a part of this, and to help be a solution.
Wonderful. And we want to have you part of this. We want to talk to you more fully. Let's make certain that we're in dialogue, and we can talk offline about a number of things, and then we can include other people. But this is exactly the situation. Here's a mom that is
good. How are you? Good to see you. Have a good day.
And her emerging adult. And there are thousands and thousands of people and thousands of families. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. What are some of the areas maybe in Ogden where we need to fill more gaps? Those of you living in Ogden, maybe Scott or Brad or someone, what are your thoughts on the gaps that we really need to address?
Yeah, I'd like to step in here. I think in Ogden, I think most areas, in fact, all areas, is getting the word out to the business owners, getting them more involved in understanding, like, hey, how can I help? How can they help? And what needs are out there in their own community. I have met with a business owner, and owns a business of 500 individuals or employees. And, I was talking to him, he's like, well, Scott, I don't know how much I can help, and I was trying to get him to be on our business advisory board. And part of what our business advisory board does at Community Options is help out our clients with employment opportunities. And that's what we're talking about here with inclusion. And I told this individual, I'm like, well, hey, you own a business of several hundred employees, but also how many business owners do you know out there that you can leverage and get the word out to provide those services as well. So I think mainly is getting the word out to a lot of these business owners around that, hey, there is a need, for employment services or whatnot. So.
And to your point, SAP has done something. At one point they were saying, and this is when the statistics were a little bit different. They said, if everybody could employ 1% of their workforce as being on the autism spectrum, now that we're going up to 2% across the country, how about 2% of your workforce? And even if you have 10 people and you have one, maybe two individuals, that gives somebody a number, and we do need to increase that. And let's work on that particular issue. It's huge.
Some of the questions that we'll be asking in the survey that's targeted to local leaders is on what are the tools or opportunities that you need to be able to be more effective. And one of the things that we have included in the survey and are happy to expand and change once you all get a draft of it, those in the autism community, is, you know, how are we connecting employers with organizations like Community Solutions so that we can kind of act as that liaison. And Community Solutions isn't always the one having to go knock on doors, but you know, it's almost like we are bringing information to employers, getting them super psyched about it, and then saying, hey, you need to go talk with Community Options. And they're going to be able to help you identify and find good matches for some of the needs that you have in your workplace. So, you know, data-driven opportunities we have found is really important. I'll give you another example in regards to housing. We did a market analysis in a small community outside of Denver, and we brought that market analysis to the Housing and Finance Authority in Colorado. And it wasn't even on their radar that people with autism or intellectual and developmental disability needed housing. It's not on the radar because in the past, people with autism and IDD wouldn't have the choice to live in their own home and access services. They were forced to live in a group home or a host home or an institution. And so just putting it on the radar and showing them the data, because the data is not capturing people who live in their family home, right? When they are capturing people at risk, those people are housed. But if they're housed with an 80-year-old mom, single mom, how much longer will they be housed? And what happens when that mom falls and breaks her hip, right? We need to be able to identify those who are at risk of displacement or homelessness and help the housing industry realize that this is a viable population that needs to be, one, counted, and two, provided for, because housing can totally change the landscape of someone's access to services, supportive amenities, all of those type of things. So we're excited about the initiative and look forward to working with you all to make sure we're collecting the right data that can not only give us our baselines, but also that we can measure over time as we start to initiate interventions.
Those metrics will be great and important. Anybody with other questions, comments?
Brad, I wonder if Brad is still on. Brad, do you have any questions?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, I was late getting on, and then now I'm had to transition to be heading to another meeting. But just to chime in for a minute, really appreciate the conversation, Jillian, you and I were able to have earlier this week. I've had some follow up with our folks, and I think from a Weber State perspective, we're really excited about this work and how we can be plugged in and be more of a, I guess I would say, a constant contributor. Our efforts have kind of ebbed and flowed, would be my assessment, with regards to our consistency to helping target not just only providing education and services for individuals who are on the autism spectrum, but also in terms of preparing professionals across all the different disciplines to be able to work with and support those individuals. So we're excited to be involved and look forward to continuing this conversation. And I do have to just tip my cap to Stacy because she's already, doing this work in our community, and I'm so glad to see that she's on this call. And Stacy is just a dynamo, and we need to figure out more how to support her.
Wonderful. And I loved what you were mentioning too in our conversation. You are kind of on the path now with having an MSW degree that you're working on, because that's a huge area in this, and there's an opportunity for a lot of employment.
Yes, our first cohort of 20 students will start that program this fall.
Congratulations. Oh, wow. That's wonderful.
Oh, that is so excellent. Okay, well, this is the kind of conversation, discussions that will continue to drive throughout the state, especially over the next 3 years, to gather that momentum and really make something happen. So you guys are in at the ground floor level, and we're depending on you to help us drive it through the Ogden region in particular, of course, throughout the rest of the state and the nation. But let's really focus on Ogden and get this done right. So hopefully we'll be able to schedule a breakfast next year, maybe, and we'll have you guys all out there. It'd be fun to be with you all in person. A huge thank you to our honorary boards and advisory boards that have been helping to build this campaign, and we're excited to move forward. So as we close out, and I just want to mention those that we're specifically collaborating with, not only Weber State, but University of Utah, USU, UVU, Utah Department of Health, the Community Options, Columbus Community Center, Scenic View Academy, Utah Parent Center. So we're really pulling in everybody, and of course, awesome autistic Ogden, we have to pull in. So it's great to have you on board, Stacy, too. All right, so thank you to everybody, and please be watching for that survey coming soon to your inbox. We're not sure exactly when, but coming soon. And we look forward to seeing you again soon, but continue for sure the conversation with you as we drive this forward. Jalen, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to say, if you'll commit to reading our emails 5 minutes each month, you're going to learn a whole lot over the process of this next 3 years. And please don't put it into your spam. Read it, because you can make a difference. And if you like it, send it on to other people too. Thank you.
Okay, and as we close, those of you who need to leave, that's great. Otherwise, we're gonna leave with a post roll, another video on from our adults with autism, talking about the misconceptions of autism. So thank you again for joining us, and if you can watch, great. Thanks. Goodbye, everybody.
Connor is a beautiful, beautiful person. He does not judge anybody. He's funny.
He's charismatic. He loves to meet new people.
Connor is social.
People want to be around him. People want to hear him laugh and joke. He's a people person.
Connor, are you ready for breakfast?
You get some cereal?
Connor hasn't had a lot of peace growing up. Good job. He has had a lot of ups and downs over the years, a lot of frustration because he can't tell us what he wants or he needs, and we're so grateful the last year and a half or so, we've been able to really see his personality come out.
I think it takes Connor a lot of time to really trust people. And when he can be in a system where he's like right now, where he's had the same teachers for 3 or 4 years, he has a strong foundation to base his learning and his development off of. But the current system continues for a couple more months and then it's over.
2 socks. Then you can get your toy, okay?
It took us probably 10 different tries to find that setting where Connor could progress and be happy. There were some where he would get so stressed he would hurt himself. He would bite chunks out of his hand. He would hit his head through the wall.
You get your shoes on?
As Connor ages out of the school and we're looking at other options, I'm worried that we won't be able to replace that.
Have a kiss. Love you. Be good. Good morning, buddy. Good morning, Connor.
All right, guys, let's get started. Let's see how you're feeling today. Jordan, Bush, how are you feeling?
Almost been anticipating this moment since I came. Like, oh my gosh, you graduate in 5 years, and then what? The support's not the same, and you know that. In the back of your head, you just think, what are you gonna do for these 5 hours a day?
Connor, how are you feeling?
How are you feeling? Happy.
I'm so glad. All right, we got 8 happy people here this morning.
I've kind of thought about the metaphor of the cliff a lot. I feel like we've taken several tandem jumps off the cliff, right? Me and Connor and his parents and all these people that understand him. And we're taking chances and doing things that aren't easy for Connor all the time because he's comfortable and safe here. And then once he turns 22, I kind of feel like then you send him out on his own, whether he has his own parachute or not. He's not going to be successful in the community or in a workplace if he doesn't feel safe.
1. Oh, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good. Some Coke?
When we're not providing that same support, I feel like as a society, we're inadvertently communicating that their goals and dreams aren't as important as other people's.
What do you need, Connor?
Okay. Good job, Connor.
I wish more people would come into our school and watch our kids and see how capable they are. There's still a huge stigma that our students are a throwaway society. Connor belongs here. He has every right to be here. He contributes. Connor's going to be with us for a really long time. It's our responsibility to rally around and support Connor's family in raising him up to be the best that he can be. What's going to happen next? We have to learn to be able to incorporate adults with autism into our community. We have to provide jobs for them. We have to pay the people better that are going to support them and live with them and care for them.
What would you like, Connor? Pardon? Coke, please.
My fear is that he will go through a ton of support workers from program to program, and nobody will get to know him like I do.
See you tomorrow? Okay, bye, bud.
Right now, Connor has 45, 50 plus hours a week of support. They have speech therapists and behavior supports and teachers, and then when they turn 22, all that structure just goes away. Even if he's in a day program offering full hours of support, instantly the hours he has support will be cut in half. The other thing that's so hard about the supports that Medicaid waivers offer are they're unpredictable. What's offered today may not be offered tomorrow.
Hey Connor, where are we going? Boardwalk, that's right.
Adults like Connor make our lives better, and they have so much to offer. He is truly a gift to my family. Every week, Connor shows us something new that he could do that we didn't know before. Nobody knows what his potential is. Nobody knows how far he could go and how much he could still learn.
Connor's just as valuable as he's ever been. He really wants to remain an active member of society. Just because these people are getting older, there's no reason that they don't deserve that same kind of support.
We know that at some point he's going to be living on his own. We don't know what that means yet. I worry that he's going to be thrown into a situation where people will see Connor as a job. I want him to be someplace where he can express himself and is always treated like a person.